big sky, big potential. In association with Mills and Reeve, this is Eastern Promise. Achieving more together. Welcome to the podcast that shares the stupendous greatness of the East of England with a world that isn't prepared for the AAA awesomeness of it all. It's the Norwich Gaming Festival, and this is Eastern Promise. I'm Mike Rigby, and this week, as the Norwich Gaming Festival reaches its final boss level, we'll be digging into the potential of the city's independent gaming scene. We're the guests of the Norwich University of the Arts, and joined by course director Professor Mark Wickham, women in tech specialist from Mills and Reeve, Rebecca Cockerill, and studio founder, indie gaming guru, and member of the Norfolk Business Board, Robin Milton. So, level up your experience points and get ready, Player One, as we power up the East of England's gaming greatness on this week's Eastern Promise. Now, if you don't consider yourself a gamer, I bring glad tidings. If you so much as play a casual game for 5 minutes whilst waiting for an appointment, congratulations, you're officially a gamer. And better yet, the East of England is one of the UK's hottest gaming hubs, with AAA studios all the way through to small indie creators. For proof, look no further than the groundbreaking Beyond Entertainment report, compiled by the Norwich University of the Arts and published along with a range of partners, including Connected Innovation, the body that, well, connects innovation across the region. What makes the Beyond Entertainment report remarkable is its focus on solutions, proposed actions that can power up the gaming sector across the East of England. To discuss these recommendations, I assembled a band of key players in the Norwich gaming scene, and so, with my stock of gaming puns almost depleted, let's load up the first level of this week's episode.
Okay, so I'm Mark Wickham. I'm Director of Computer Arts and Technology here at the university. So I'm responsible for looking after the games, animation, visual effects, computing and esports courses here at the university. I'm also an Associate Professor in Games and an Educational Advisor for TIGA, who's the Independent Game Developers Association, one of the trade associations for the games industry in the UK.
Fantastic. We all already know from previous episodes what a fantastic indie hub for gaming, or hub for indie gaming, Norwich is, and also other parts of the region as well. But we'll go on to my next guest, who's a returning guest, I'm proud to say. I think it's the third appearance, if I'm counting. Introduce yourself, please.
Yes, thank you for having me back, Mike. I'm Robin Milton. I am a game developer by trade. I have a studio called Ferra Games, but I also help run Norfolk Game Developers, which is our local community group of developers and enthusiasts. And we are probably well over 500 strong now in both in-person meetups, which are supported by the university, and online, which is really good. And I also volunteer with the Norfolk Business Board in my capacity as a digital creative sector professional. And I also do mentoring and teaching and lots of things. that's me. And would you like me to...
You put a very good case for doing it yourself.
Yeah, I just wanted to give some context to why I was really excited Rebecca could join us, Rebecca Cockerill from Mills and Reeve, because as someone that I've known for a number of years now, I've always been really impressed by your involvement and support of the community aspect of tech, as well as the business aspect, because I think Norwich is quite unique in that the networks and community groups are just as much a part of the economic growth of the region as the commercial businesses.
Thank you, Robin. Yeah, and I totally agree. I think that's one of the Norwich's main strengths is its community and the supportive environment. And I'm pleased that the little part I can play in that does get rewarded. But so I'm Rebecca Cockerill, partner at Mills and Reeve. We have a big tech sector at Mills and Reeve, and I lead the Norwich aspect of that. But I'm across both Norwich and Cambridge, so an Eastern region focus. And I also lead the Inspiring Women in Tech initiative, which we do run nationally, but we were really keen to launch it in Norwich in person because we thought it was a great location to get the community support there. So that was great.
Thank you, and I will just add that from James Fry on commercialisation of science to Greg Gibson on, we had a roundtable on how to get more SMEs in the region engaged with government contracts. I have never, and I'm not just saying this because, you know, listeners to this will have heard the jingle that I've created for Mills and Reeve at the beginning of this podcast, but I am so, you know, I've never been anything other than thrilled by the contribution of the Mills and Reeve team when they've taken part in one of these roundtables. And this is a really exciting report, and the link to it, Beyond Entertainment, will be in, as they say, the notes to this podcast. Please remember to like and subscribe. I'm going to ask Robin to kick us off with a profile, if you will, of the games industry in the east of England, the regional hubs. You've already alluded to the networking groups here in Norwich, and any institutions of note. I think I've put it that pompously. So, Robin, over to you.
Yeah, so I did try to do a little bit of prep for this in advance, but I know that I will have omitted some. So I encourage people to add their knowledge, as you do on LinkedIn, inviting people to bring their knowledge to the table of things that I will have missed. But to kick off, we've obviously got Norfolk Game Developers as a meetup group. In the same vein, Suffolk Game Developers meet, I believe, monthly or every other month at West Suffolk College and are doing similar events where they have people bring their games to show and tell and kind of network. We also have Essex Game Developers based in the University of Essex down in Colchester. More recently, we've got People in Games Peterborough, colloquially known as Ping, and there's also Cambridge Indies, and wrapping around a fair chunk of that as well is Game Anglia, which is a CIC, so not a meetup community group, but a community interest company which is supporting and working towards raising the profile of games in the east of England, East Anglia. And then alongside that, we've got institutions. So alongside Norwich University of the Arts, we have UEA that run Game Society as well as computer science courses. We have, on the FE side of things, we've got Norwich City College, Access Creative, West Suffolk College, Cambridge Regional College, East Norfolk Sixth Form, which are all running games courses at level 2 and 3. Is this what you're after?
This is exceeding my wildest dreams, but carry on.
There's a lot going on, quite apart from University of Suffolk, which also have a really fantastic games course, Anglia Ruskin, and in Peterborough as well.
Yes.
So that's all going on. And then wrapping around all these things, we have what I've put in as like support groups of games. So not necessarily game specific, but groups like Inspiring Women in Tech. There's a lot of crossover between people working in research and deep tech and game design and kind of games technologies. Creative East, which was the investment readiness program. A lot of the alumni and cohorts from the Creative East program either are part of the games community or work with games. Then you've got groups like Hot Sauce, which are creative tech, Sync the City, which have supported games teams in their competitions. Nordev, which is a big conference that has had games tracks in the past and have often supported Norfolk Game Developers, which has been great. Then you've got Excella, which is like the business incubator space in Norwich, which is fantastic to see a number of games businesses going through that program, and Fuel Studios that kind of houses that. And then we've got Norfolk Network and the Gerald's Business Network, which have been supporting games businesses and kind of commingling with other businesses. Then we've got the Growth Hub program, which helps businesses find funding. And finally on my list is Connected Innovation, because James was going to join us today but wasn't able to. But Connected Innovation have done a great job of, number one, being very patient with the amount of nagging that I've done with them, of saying, can you help these people? Can you get in touch? Can you come to this event? Can you sponsor?
I'm glad it's not just me doing that. I feel better now.
Yeah, and they have been phenomenal in doing that. And it's been brilliant to see students now starting to understand what the regional kind of funding landscape is, right from, you know, exhibiting at the Norwich Games Festival, which is another big part of the kind of network, and more. So there's loads happening. There's loads that I will have missed, but it's a taste.
I think it's really good, and future guests should bear in mind that Robin has done homework. Taking this beyond entertainment port, this games growth plan for the East, I just want to get a sense of what is the prize we're looking at if everything comes good, and what's the size of that, and what will it mean for the region if we get this right and everything comes to pass?
Great question. I think there's lots of different ways to kind of pull that apart. The prize is as big as we can possibly make it. I think it's recognition of what's already happening, the kind of the established practice, the companies that are already out there, the great work we've been doing with the university and other education providers in preparing the next generation of developers. We've got some really enthusiastic students who become enthusiastic graduates and then developers in their own right and set up small studios that develop medium studios. It's really about making sure that we are connecting the dots, and Robin and I have sort of talked about this kind of constellation and trying to make sure that we can align the stars to get some of this stuff to happen. I think, Mike, you highlight one of the challenges around this is because everyone's busy and everyone's disparate. How do we bring this together, and how do we formalise this in a way that isn't dictatorial, that is inclusive, and sticks to predominantly thinking about Norwich, because it's obviously where I'm based and have worked for the last 20 years. The kind of the indie ethos of can do, will do, and we can make this stuff happen ourselves, but also to be incredibly inclusive in that, to make sure that we're sharing that knowledge and kind of the benefits and rewards. Games has seen a huge journey over the last 20 years, and certainly with my career, and things are just unrecognisable from where they started out in terms of tech and availability, and kind of the amount of interest and respect it's gained over that time. It's a very, very different world out there, and obviously there's lots of other things happening commercially that we could talk at length about, several podcasts I'm sure. But it's how we bring all those pieces together. How do we make sure that everyone's at the table and talking and thinking about how do we make the region the best it possibly can be? UK has got a really big sector in gaming across the world in terms of games development and getting games out there. So there's lots of stuff, lots of good activity happening here in the region. We just need to promote and show what's going on.
Can I jump in and just say that on that point, I think one of the key guiding lights for us was really looking at sustainability for the region in games, because as you say, like, the games industry has seen a huge amount of growth. It is the exports of the games industry in the UK are world leading, but we really want to be looking at ways that we can build a sustainable industry in East Anglia based on the work that's already been done here, because we want to create businesses that can stay here and grow here and not have a kind of feast and famine kind of structure, which has been an element of the games industry previously.
And hence beyond entertainment, because the entertainment sector does see boom and bust quite frequently. It's something we go through. If you look back through cinema, you'll have seen certain eras where it's booming and other times where it's just dropping off the map. So trying to find other more sustainable approaches to the business methodologies where we don't necessarily need tentpole, £10 million studios that are supporting giant AAA games, but actually smaller studios, more independent, able to produce content more rapidly and get it out to a localised audience. But also, the report talks a lot about spillover tech and the opportunities in cross-sector. So games as a technology kind of sector has grown, and it's spilled massively outside of its kind of initial intent. Real-time technology is there and is very, very important, and is being used by vast numbers of industries now. So there's opportunities for the games developers to not only do the thing that they love in the first instance, but to take their tools, talent and experience and apply that to other sectors as well.
I think you can. There are different types of investors, and each look at different things. So you can almost focus too much on how we're going to sell that, and actually focus on the breadth of anything that has a commercialisation to it is going to be attractive. And I think part of we need to play to our strengths, and cross-sector is one of those. And we can't deny agri-tech, agriculture is a massive part of the region, as is the kind of plant bio.
Food sciences.
Exactly,
as well.
exactly. Yeah. The things that are going on at the research park. You almost need to join those two together. That's why I loved what you did with your first year students, because you also mentioned risk a lot, which always makes me laugh as a lawyer, because that is our job, to identify the risks and think about the risks. But actually, you do de-risk it if you can show not only is this gaming, but also you can utilise it in the short term or in the medium term to get whatever agricultural use it might have, to immediately show that you've got that diversity. So if you take a massive dip does happen in the gaming industry, you can divert and pivot to a different and use that.
I mean, people often will say, like, oh, where's the games industry going? Like, the huge kind of terrifying questions that no one can ever answer. But something I always come back to is I do feel that the application of the technology, but also the design approaches, the kind of psychology of games and interaction and information delivery, in partnership with the already fantastic work the commercial team are doing with the research park, that's the kind of marrying of skill sets that can create huge growth and is kind of win-win, in that the scientific research reaches a wider audience, whether it's commercial or kind of public, or the public leads to commercial. And the game kind of skill sets are able to benefit from working within another industry. And like, I always see that as, you have to have reinvestment and kind of nutrition to the kind of the games industry. If all games ever did was just kind of feed on its own creations, it's going to get stale quite quickly. And I think looking at like the other areas is amazing.
Yeah, the games industry is massively self-referential. I think that's why we see the same titles coming out and people getting bored of it. So it's exciting to have different.
But if you're thinking like the Quadram Institute, you've the opportunities there for sort of teaching people about the internal workings of the digestive system. Then what brilliant opportunities are there for a gamer to design something that enables that conversation. And I just want to go back to something.
Can I pick up on that? Just because perfect segue into I mentioned earlier the Big C. So one of the projects we've been working on, which really illustrates exactly what's going on here, is our kind of commitment to research and staff development, but also working with organisations that are doing things outside of games. And a couple of years ago, in this very room, we met with the Big C, who wanted to have a way to communicate to children and families who are going through cancer treatment what's happening, what the process is, what's going to be happening to the kind of loved one, and in a way that's engaging. Now, how do you communicate something as complex as that to a 6-year-old? So they were really interested in exploring how games could be used, and would that be something that could be a kind of a talking point to kind of get things going. So we spoke with them, and we set up a process where we do regular game jams. So a game jam is where you set a little brief, and within a couple of days or a week you have a whole team of people put a game together and prototype it and showcase it. So we had, I think, 16 or 20 student groups of around 7 or 10 people make prototypes based on the concept that the Big C were pitching, and they came and did a lecture on some of the diagnostics and what the process was and what it kind of involves. So from the scientific perspective, the kind of the key points and the messages they need to get across, and then the students develop some initial ideas. And that's actually evolved beyond that. We've taken that and turned it into a staff-related project. So we've just got to the point where we finished making a first prototype that we're hoping to push out to get some more seed funding to turn into a full game, which obviously the Big C will be able to use. Big C is a regional cancer charity if you've not come across them. And not only have we set this up as the kind of a first showcase as proof of concept, we'll be rolling this out further. So the aim is now, Jake, I'm throwing you in this, we're going to be doing this yearly to try and work with external companies that we're going to be producing content that can be published to showcase games developers, the interesting stuff that can be produced, but in a context that's not necessarily or not exclusively entertainment. Doesn't mean it can't be, but it's more interesting to find some reference points that are outside of games to showcase what we're doing.
I'm sitting here and it occurs to me that the possibilities are endless, and I'm just thinking, how would you promote the region as a gaming hub? You'd create a game to do it, and heritage.
There's a Norwich studio that worked with, I think, Ipswich Town Council to produce a AR trail. Specifically around historic docklands.
Visualisation of the castle was done by one of our graduates.
I was going to say, I haven't gone there yet, so I didn't feel comfortable mentioning it.
The point I wanted to make around this, though, is that these are all fantastic examples, but as you hear, it comes through research funding, grant funding, educational institutions. And I think the gap that we're really identifying with this is that there is a commercial potential opportunity, but if it's going to work, there's got to be some sort of funding that can help us prove what we can do, so that then we can kind of expand it further. And I think that's ultimately, like you were saying, the prize is having some sort of mechanism around that, because was it knowledge exchange funding, the Big C project? Yeah, so that's kind of a mechanism within higher education. And like heritage projects, often it's like Arts Council funding or there's other kind of grants, but we need to be able to kind of offer experimental pots, maybe with the park. I don't want to speak for anyone else.
I'm just thinking maybe the universities can sort of, a few slugs of a little eventually.
I guess what I'm saying is it's good to have it within higher education institutions, but we also need to explore it being independent from that if we're looking at real commercial growth, because otherwise it can, the risk is that it stays grant-based and we can't break it out into a much kind of bigger scale.
Commercial aspect, as we've discussed before, is really, really vital. That it needs to be there because it's more accessible for people further afield. Globally they can see it's commercial success. I will invest in this, rather than it's a really interesting project that's research-led or has students involvement, which is fantastic and really exciting. But it's just got to move into that next level.
And someone might turn around and go, "That's lovely, but because it was done off the back of a grant or off the back of this, could it still survive if it was commercially funded?" And that sometimes happens a lot with like diversely founded teams or businesses. They're like, "That's great, but the first funding you got was a grant. Therefore, is your business actually commercially successful, or are you only going to be like project reliant?" And I think that's my concern, is making sure if we're working on this, it's towards something that can really be sustainable long term, that can benefit from student involvement, research involvement, but ultimately can stand on its own 2 feet as well.
Mark, number one of the 6 interventions critical to unlocking games growth for the East: retaining graduate talent. This sounds like your field. So
absolutely.
How do you envisage retaining that graduate talent, and what will that mean once you do?
I think I need to give you some context for that to start with. So the university was one of the first universities to develop a higher education games course. So back in 2004 we set up Games Art and Design, so we've been running for over 20 years. We were one of 8 games courses that were available at HE, but we're the only arts focused course, and specifically looking at kind of that side of things rather more than programming. It was content creation. it was small numbers to start with. Nobody had done games education prior to coming to us, so we would see students, people applying from graphic design, from fine art, from photography, from media studies, a range of different areas going, oh, you do games, that's really interesting. And we've been through the years of convincing parents and grandparents that it's a real thing. There's lots and lots of money in games and lots of success happening there. Move forward a few years, 10 years on, and we're one of the biggest courses in the university. A couple of years after that, we've been the biggest course in the university. There's a huge demand. So it's always been part of my job, initially as lecturer, through course lead, through now program director and working with games, making sure we're considering the pipeline of where students come in to us, what skill sets they have and bring and they need, and that evolves and changes every year as technology becomes more accessible, software's more readily available than it's ever been, so students learn more, even if it's not been through formal education. They've kind of played around with the toys before they come to us, so they can do more.
So we're talking about things like Unreal?
Unreal, yeah, absolutely. So Unreal's completely available to anyone to download, which means we see and Blender and
Unreal, which is a game engine.
Which is
a piece of software that basically brings together all the assets of a game in order to create the interactive experience for the player.
Trying not to go too much of a tangent, but the Unreal Engine is what drives our immersive visualization lab as well. So it's the thing that creates all of the real-time content, and all of the floodplain simulations are through Unreal technology. So the evolution of our students coming into us and what we need to do to prepare them for, to educate them so they're not being trained in games specifically. We're trying to make sure that they understand the tools, the technology, the context of games, and can actually develop a career beyond. So we really want critical creatives. We want people to be able to think about how they're going to apply the knowledge and skill sets they've acquired, rather more than walk into a particular role. And that's changed over the years as well. They shift and they move, and the needs of industry evolve. So we've always got to match to the other end. So what do our graduates do? Where do they want to go? Some aspire to work in a very particular role, and they perhaps want to be a modeller and create levels, or they may want to be a producer, or they may want to work in community management or something like that. But we also have students who come on the course and say, well, actually, I want to make my own games. I want to set up my own studio. How do I do that? How do I understand business? What's tax? How does that work for me? What are the legalities? How do I pitch to get funding? So we've kind of incorporated all of those things within the course too. And then as people come onto the course, you start to see, well, it's not just limited to games anymore. You can investigate a whole range of different opportunities. There's research strands, visual effects, animation, the list goes on. So it's about trying to make sure that we're thinking about not only what the students bring to us, what the expectations of industry are, but also kind of trying to guess where that is going to go, educated guess, and thinking about, well, the lay of the land at the moment is not where it's going to be 3 years, 5 years down the line when a graduate leaves us. So we've got to prepare them for that world, and obviously that's becoming more challenging.
Can I jump in a little just on because with my role, I don't think I actually said explicitly, but I teach on the first year of the Games Development BSc at Norwich University of the Arts. The first thing I would say is, alongside that, preparing them for a variety of kind of futures ahead of them. One of the projects that I run with them is Applied Games, which is tasking them with taking an area of research at the Norwich Research Park and developing a game that can help communicate that research, which is an ambitious project in first year, but first year is a great time to do it because they have a lot of free rein to kind of make mistakes or misjudge things or explore things that they may decide they don't want to carry on. But it's been a lot of fun. They are due to hand in May, so we will see. It's the first year we're running it. The second point around retaining talent, I think there's we're not having to convince graduates to stay. They want to stay. Yes. Our challenge is building a kind of ecosystem that they can stay in and work and live here. Because if you speak to most of the graduates, particularly from Norwich University of the Arts, they really want to stay in the region, they really want to stay in Norwich.
Best city in the country.
Well, we just had the Times, haven't we? But And I think it's taken a while to get over the stigma of living and working in Norwich, hasn't it? Wrongly, but, and I think we are over that.
We don't have to convince students to stay, because once you've been to Norwich, most people fall in love with it and do want to stay, and even if they do have to leave temporarily, lots of them come back.
And I'm a firm believer in, if someone wants to go, let them go, and help encourage them to be an ambassador as well. Say, what help do you need to set up outside of this county, because you're going to be our ambassador, and say, they really helped me. Oh, that sounds like a great place. I'll take a look. And then they come back and they bring their family and they inculcate that love of place all over again. Number 2 on this list of 6 interventions, develop a regional games fund. Rebecca.
Yeah, it would be great to have a regional games fund. How you get that funding and how you actually make that a reality is the difficulty. And I can see the benefit of mirroring the UK Games Fund, as you allude to, and having it as a community interest company, doing it in that kind of model. But it still needs funding. It still needs the money in. Yeah, and it's whether you can bring together the funding that's already there to a certain extent, rather than starting from zero and getting a magic pot of funding and add to that. It's incentivising everyone to come together, and I think the will's there.
This was a really big part of the report. It's the calling card. It's the trying to get the stars to align. It's to make sure everyone knows what's going on. And I think regional development funds that the government's been issuing, lots of them haven't really come this way.
Shared prosperity funding, which is now becoming something else, I think, at some point.
So it's kind of highlighting the opportunity, and this report is trying to sort of showcase all the amazing things that are happening as a start point, because as I said, it's very, very difficult to map all of the amazing things that are going on. But as a calling card to get people to say, well, actually, there is a good place to invest. There is already some infrastructure and some amazing things happening. What happens if we do put a bit more money in there? What happens if we do support it and set up a hub and all of these kind of things? Yeah. So, I don't think there's a magic bullet yet, but there's the potential of one.
There's a couple of really successful kind of case studies that I can kind of point to. One is in Australia, which is the Victoria Screen Fund, and that is a blend of public and private financing fund, and that's aimed at the screen industries. The other is the Northern Ireland Screen Fund, which is a similar approach. And I think the Northern Ireland Screen Fund has a really fantastic approach to this, in that it acknowledges the inherent risk in early stage creative startups and develops smaller pots of funding that are delivered at milestone points, so that the risk is lesser with the fund anyway, but allows the studios to experiment. Because I think something that doesn't get spoken about enough, and the reason why a fund is a part of this, not the only solution, is creatives have to be able to experiment. Yeah. The reason why we have a lot of challenges in the creative industries at the kind of much higher budget end is because risk has become the kind of the master of all of the decision making, and it's the experimentation of independent businesses that is when you see these breakout hits, when you see that, like, 4 people made a game that's made £12 million or something. And so with the Northern Ireland Screen Fund, they've been able to acknowledge that and build it into the process. So, okay, you've got a cool idea, we'll give you up to £2,000 in this period of time. I'm not going to have the correct numbers, but it's that approach of, here's a little, make a thing, show it to us. Okay, that's good. Yeah. Here's another little bit of money. Great, keep going.
So are there those sort of tentpole examples we can put forward and say, this is what we can achieve, and these people did it?
Absolutely. I think what you have to consider is what people would consider, what do they identify with? So we use quite commonly, we've had graduates and students working on the Star Wars franchising games, Matrix franchising games, working at large companies like Rare or Frontier, or moving on to Ubisoft, or so many different examples where but it's trying to find what kind of game do you play? Is it Candy Crush I need to reference to get through to you? so that you understand, oh, right, okay, you did that, and that's where it becomes challenging. And I think for me, some of the real successes, and it's fantastic to work on those giant franchises, really big established companies. But I think when you think about, and I'm going to name check, Oddbug Studios, graduates who went to Dare to be Digital many years ago, a competition where there were 10 teams from across the globe that would come to Abate and develop a game over a number of weeks. Robin's smiling because she did it as well, second team to get up there.
Year of 2014.
Norwich effect, we had three out of 4 teams make it to the final, and that's of 10 teams globally.
My goodness.
So Oddbug Studios, went off, did that, and then they set up, and they were taken under Sony's wing for a while, and then they had a PlayStation VR launch title, and have gone on to continue to make fantastic, interesting games. And I think some of those stories you may not necessarily know. You don't be in the know, but those are more important to sing about and say this is what's going on, because it's probably more interesting than seeing a sequel to a title you've heard of many times before.
And I think it's probably wishful thinking to think we'll suddenly get a massive, unicorn-style game, whereas actually, as you said, demonstrating the breadth is a strength in itself.
Can I just add one small thing? How do we pitch the region? I always go to, we have multiple BAFTA award-winning game developers working and running studios in Norfolk. And I think that usually is something where people go, oh, I didn't realise that. And it's like, yes.
Kate Killick's been a guest on this very podcast.
Yeah, Piece Together came out on the 6th of March. So that's now...
I think we also have a range of developers from kind of the earlier days of games, sort of the early 90s and through, that again are the people that have gone and done their thing but come back to Norfolk because that's where they love and they want to be. So I think highlighting and finding a mechanism to showcase those people as well and the experience that they've gained and bring back is vital too, and part of what we need to be doing.
Robin, mid-career skills.
Yeah.
What define that for us, for the listener, in the gaming sector, and how does the report, and do you see that becoming strengthened?
So this point mostly came through kind of focus group conversations in the research work for the report. So we were speaking to a lot of different companies to say, what would make you want to move here? What have been some barriers to growth whilst in the region? Or what has stopped you from moving here, etc. And I think we've established that there's a huge pool of graduate talent, right? But mid-career, so people who have a number of years' experience in a variety of industries, we struggle to retain that talent, but also businesses that are looking to hire that level of talent really struggle to find those people locally. So specifically in games, when I'm talking to developers that have moved their studio here or have just won funding or maybe gained investment and they're looking to expand their team, often because the size of the company is smaller, they may be able to support one junior role, but really they need to find experienced roles, and they have really struggled with that. So even with the community groups that I mentioned previously, there isn't a formalised job board or talent matching kind of element within the region.
Can we gamify it?
Well, this is the thing. I'm currently working on seeing if I can convince the Growth Hub team to explore this as a potential thing that they can support with, because already they've been helping match businesses with funding, but if that funding is successful, often those businesses are growing. And can we look at using the Growth Hub as talent pool as well? It also has the benefit of it being independent from any existing kind of business, which can be a challenge in this. If someone owns the job board, it can very quickly turn into something that is incentivized away from matching people with the right roles or making things available. And so having that independence for, again, sustainability, you really want that. otherwise, those things disappear when one person leaves the region.
I think it comes back to the kind of one of the other points is, it's about having a front desk. It's about having a place where people convene and meet and talk and see what's going on. And the idea of a hub is for those water cooler moments. So you're not necessarily working in the same company, but you come together and have a chat while you're having a break, and all of a sudden that IP, that interest, the coming together of different ideas forms a new company and starts something else, and provides those opportunities to spin out and do different stuff at a point in your career.
And I think my concern is the Norwich Research Park have got that from a kind of science perspective.
The centre.
The critical mass.
Yeah, whereas that is lacking, and there is a lot of people doing good things. You've got the fuel studio.
That's the kind of odd thing with these sort of remote professionals is that we may well have that talent, but they may not know where to advertise that talent if they were looking to move to a local business. Yeah. Because they're used to working remotely, they might not be kind of plugged into the existing kind of normal networks where you might find out someone's looking for work.
I think it's also there's a lot of secrecy that comes around kind of entertainment specifically, but kind of new knowledge. So trying to get people to work in the same room is obviously going to be challenging, but I think building a facility that would take that into consideration is where it would differ. So, having a tech centre where people can come together and work on the highly top secret products, whatever they're making, but still have the opportunity to brush shoulders with other people rather than being locked off in your home office.
My huge thanks to Mark, to Rebecca and to Robin for that fascinating discussion. Let's power up the end game that is my action points.
Action points! Action points! Action points!
The puns have got a power up.
One.
The first action point is simply this. Read the Beyond Entertainment report. The link you need is in the notes to this podcast.
2.
Ask yourself how, in whatever you do, you can help deliver the recommendations in this report in concert with Norwich University of the Arts and Connected Innovation.
3.
Now, there's got to be an empty property somewhere in central Norwich that can be brought into a meantime use to provide a gaming hub to serve as proof of concept for an independent central facility. If you can help, do, especially if you're Norwich City Council.
4.
Learn about the East of England's gaming sector, whether the AAA studios of Cambridge, the tech labs in Ipswich, or the indie gaming hubs of Norwich and Peterborough. Achieving the right outcome for the East of England's gaming sector requires a massive joint effort across the board. We need to see the whole of that board to make the right decisions. And that was the final cutscene for this week's Action Points. And that's it! My last life gone, and the timer has run out for episode 171 of the Eastern Promise podcast. I have been Mike Rigby, and will be so again next week when we will be at the Southern North Sea Conference 2026, celebrating 25 years of the East of England Energy Group. I'll be chatting with delegates and exhibitors, including Man of the Moment, Chair of the East of England Energy Group, Kevin Keeble. It's an exciting ride through one of our region's most important growth sectors. Join me for that next week. Until then, bye for now. To hear other episodes of the Eastern Promise podcast and to find out more about what we do, go to our website at easternpromise.org.uk. Eastern Promise is a Pudding Shed production in proud association with Mills and Reeve. Achieving more together.